Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani, and guess what I learned yesterday? Merriam-Webster said the word of the year for 2022 is gaslighting. The word of the year. When I got that message from a colleague of mine, I had a strong mix of emotions to that. Mostly good, somewhat surprised, but it also led me to reflect on what got us to this moment. Because in fact, in 2019, the word of the year was toxic. But I do think that the choice of a word really raises some issues about what's good and what's bad about what's happening in the world now. So let's start with your first time that you heard the word gaslighting. When was the first time you heard the word? What was the context? Was it possible you were doing your own research about toxic relationships? Did someone tell you about it? In fact, drop in the comments. When was the first time you heard the word? Now, everyone comes to this word in different ways. I have worked with multiple clients who have been in very long-term marriages, 30, 40, 50 years plus. And many of them shared with me after 30, 40 plus years in these marriages, they had only heard and connected to this word gaslighting and connected that to the disaster of their marriages only in the last 3, 5, 6 years. But of course, in about the last 10, 15, 20 years came the internet and social media, and a way to get away from the flat mainstream media and the opportunity for lots of people to talk about their experiences in their lives, good, bad, and different, in an honest way, though I don't know that everyone uses the word gaslighting accurately, but we'll talk more about that in a minute. It's a bit of a bummer because if gaslighting is the word of the year, it's a reminder of how many people are being gaslighted by so many different sources. It's a reminder that narcissistic abuse, toxic relationships, and manipulation not only appear to be universal, but it seems like they've become a really sad new normal. Now, I'm going to use this video as a chance, if gaslighting is the word of the year, to make sure everyone really knows what it is. The problem is that when something is the word of the year, and it is a bit of a subtle, nuanced concept like gaslighting is, that a lot of people may not actually know what it is. So we must remember that gaslighting is a multi-step process. It requires some trust or belief in the gaslighter, otherwise they wouldn't have that much power in your life. And that would mean that it's likely a partner, family member, some kind of expert or a person in power, or maybe somebody or many people who already have a platform. Now next, there has to be an attempt to deny another person's reality or their experience or their perception. A denial that something didn't happen, or a denial that or telling someone they remembered something the wrong way. There has to be an attempt also to pathologize or depict the person who has been gaslighted as somehow pathological or impaired. You're too sensitive. You really aren't that smart. Or you're paranoid, or you need help, or you think everything's about you, or you seem to be mentally off, or maybe you're getting demented. Whatever the person says, not only do they deny reality, they tell them they're impaired. And then this gaslighting process is repeated. Now, one episode of gaslighting is enough to throw us off our game, but multiple episodes over and over again leave us destabilized, anxious, depressed, apathetic, confused, self-doubting, self-blaming, and definitely not our best selves. The final step of gaslighting is basically utter domination. If a person is gaslighted for long enough and doesn't leave the relationship and never gets to hear that, in fact, that their reality is quite valid, then the gaslighter basically has psychologically imprisoned their target. And the person who has been gaslighted may actually present a face to the world that makes it seem like they are in agreement with the gaslighter. They kind of look and sound like someone who has been indoctrinated into a cult. All of this, is a damaging process. Now, gaslighting happens, obviously, and it's the example most of us have, at the individual level in our close relationships. But it can also obviously happen at the family level with multiple people gaslighting someone, at the community level with people in our local worlds, in the workplace level. Whatever kind of community we're in, Perhaps again, gaslighting inexperience. And then, of course, there are the politicians, corporations, media, and society at large. Well, these days, these kinds of places and people and platforms are making their money and deriving their power from gaslighting the public at large. So it's really no wonder that gaslighting is the word of the year. This isn't just about toxic romantic relationships. It can feel frustrating talking about gaslighting unless we know, is there something we can actually do about it? And it's not always easy. Now, half of the battle is recognizing that we're being gaslighted, and ideally in real time, so we don't blame ourselves for the upside down, confusing mess that is a manipulative relationship. And then if we can understand the phenomenon, we can we can disengage quickly. If we see it happening, if we see gaslighting happening to someone else, to know that we can step in and let that person know that we can see that they're being gaslighted. Therapy can also be a powerful space in which to turn off gaslights as long as the therapist knows what it is. Now, I have to say I am a little bit worried that words like gaslighting and narcissism become more and more prevalent, that people are more and more likely to not understand them and then use them in the wrong way. A lot of people view gaslighting as just lying or a difference of opinion or a disagreement. It's not. It's a systematic dismantling of another person. It's more than you can get into in a 30-second TikTok video. It's a deep, subtle, nuanced, pervasive phenomenon. It's important we don't use this word wrong, because when we do, we sort of soften the word. And over time, as words like gaslighting enter the vernacular, there is a greater risk of the people who really are being harmed by gaslighting being minimized for their experiences, being minimized by courts and justice systems and therapists and healthcare and the workplace, and just by the world at large. Listen, the same thing is happening with the word narcissism, with lots of people using it incorrectly, leaving those who are actually enduring narcissistically abusive relationships being doubted again, which is terrible after they've been doubted in these relationships for so long. So if gaslighting is the word of the year, which means it wasn't really a very good year, but if gaslighting is the word of the year, let's just make sure we understand it. And then be aware of it when it's happening, so we can all stop blaming ourselves for the toxic relationships that are clearly happening to most of us. So if we go from toxic to gaslighting of the words of the year, I'm still holding my breath. Who wants to take a bet that narcissism is going to be the word of the year within the next 5 years? Thanks again.